There was a 4-part documentary that just aired on the Investigation Discovery Network called Quiet Onset, The Dark Side of Kids TV. And it was largely about Nickelodeon and some of the people who worked at Nickelodeon during the 1990s and early 2000s. And I would just like to point out at this point that I was right about everything. So I wrote a book called Porn Generation in 2005. That book was very socially conservative, and it talked at length about the attempt to mainstream sexualization of children by places like Disney and Nickelodeon. I'm just going to read you a few quotes from my book, which was written when I was 21 years old. Parents are continuing to buy into the cleanliness of Disney Channel stars, Pop-Tarts like Hilary Duff and Lindsay Lohan, but each is busily transitioning from a role model to a Madonna lookalike. Duff sounds eerily like a young Britney Spears or Christina Aguilera when she claims, "I think I'm pretty straightforward. I'm an honest person. If people look up to me because of that, I'm just being cool. That's cool. Being myself, that's being cool." Lohan, who turned 18 in 2004, started off doing family fare like the charming The Parent Trap and The Funny Freaky Friday. Her most recent projects included Mean Girls and Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen. There's only one problem. As Rolling Stone describes it, quote, "There comes a time in the life of every teenage girl who works for the Disney Corporation when that girl realizes she has suddenly, how shall we phrase this, broadened her appeal." I talk at length about the move that Disney TV did, as well as Nickelodeon, to basically take virginal young girls and then sexualize them for a mass audience. On Britney Spears, I wrote this, quote, "Spears quickly transitioned from a popular virgin into an even more popular Madonna imitator. Her first hit single, Baby One More Time, moved her squarely into the realm of sexuality. By the end of 1999, over 10 million copies of Baby One More Time had been sold, and Britney had posed in her 90s for Rolling Stone at the tender age of 17. The reason that I read this is because this has been a long time coming, and everybody who pointed this out, going all the way back to the 2000s, again, I wrote this book when I was 21 in 2005. Everybody who pointed this out was called a prude. Everybody was too virginal and too virtuous and too Bible thumping. That's why this was all a problem. No, young girls coming into their sexuality to be exploited by Nickelodeon and Disney, that was just freedom, we were told. Well, now it turns out that that has a pretty high cost. We know what happened to pretty much all of these women. And it didn't go great for a huge number of them. Okay, so in Quiet Onset, this particular documentary looks in particular at Dan Schneider. He's a former Nickelodeon producer who is responsible for some of the biggest shows that were on the network, including All That, The Amanda Show, which is an Amanda Bynes show, Drake and Josh, iCarly. There are a lot of critiques of Dan Schneider, even before the release of this particular documentary, including suggestive sexual jokes in shows meant for kids. And not just that, there are a lot of examples of Dan Schneider hanging around in pretty inappropriate ways with these kids. So, for example, here is some video of Dan Schneider in a hot tub with Amanda Bynes, who is underage.
Today my special guest is the executive producer of The Amanda Show, Dan Schneider.
Hi.
Now you're the executive producer of the show.
Yes, I'm the executive producer and the head writer.
You actually wrote the words we're saying to each other right now.
Yeah. Yes, I wrote this whole conversation that we're having right here.
Since you're the executive producer.
Give me an IC. Can we have an IC before sent to the executive producer?
Creepy and weird. Creepy and weird stuff there. He also wrote scenes for people like Ariana Grande, who, of course, has become now a big sex symbol. And this was considered totally okay. This was considered totally okay at the time. $20 barely gets you anything these days. You can't get a burger and fries for less than that. What about at the gas pump? Well, maybe a quarter tank of gas. But do you know what $20 will get you? From the cell phone company I use, Pure Talk, you can get unlimited talk, text, and plenty of 5G data for just $20 a month. Pure Talk gives you the same quality of service as your current cell phone provider, but for half the cost. The average family saves almost $1,000 a year, all with no contracts and no activation fees. You can switch to Pure Talk and keep the phone and phone number you currently use, or you can take advantage of their great deals on the latest iPhones and Androids. Making the switch is incredibly easy. Their U.S. customer service team can help you join Pure Talk in as little as 10 minutes. Choose to spend your hard-earned money with a wireless company that shares your values, supports our military and veterans, creates American jobs, and refuses to advertise on, those fake news networks. Stop spending ridiculous amounts of money on your phone plan. Go to puretalk.com/Shapiro. Right now, my listeners can get an additional 50% off their very first month. That's puretalk.com/Shapiro. Again, puretalk.com/Shapiro. Go check them out right now. Miranda Cosgrove was actually videoed trying to move away from Dan Schneider at her 18th birthday party. Here's what that looked like.
Now look, honestly, in trying to figure out what I could say today about Miss Miranda for her birthday, I come to the conclusion that what you can say is, what can't you say? I mean, honest to God, I could go on and on.
She's like, I wish you were not holding my shoulders right now.
But I know
it's like Joe Biden with a small girl.
And I will consolidate it to just this one thing. In all the years I've known Miranda, I guess 9 years
she's like desperately
now,
trying to.
She hasn't changed. Miranda hasn't changed one bit. All those awesome qualities that she had when she was 9 years old.
There she is, trying to edge away slowly.
All those smiles.
Yeah. Dan Schneider did eventually cut an apology video for all those sorts of jokes. But again, this was considered totally fine in Hollywood. Hollywood is filled, unfortunately, with perverts. There are a lot of perverts in Hollywood. That's just the reality. That's been true for legitimately decades on end, going all the way back to Fatty Arbuckle. But weirdos and creeps hanging around kids, that's also been a long rumored thing in Hollywood, and that's been largely ignored. Here's Dan Schneider's apology video.
Watching over the past 2 nights was very difficult. Me facing my past behaviors, some of which are embarrassing and that I regret.
And meanwhile, this documentary also focused in on a person named Brian Peck. Brian Peck was a former dialogue coach. He worked with Nickelodeon for a lot of years, but then he was convicted to 16 months behind bars in 2004 for lewd acts with a minor. And then when he came out, he went right back to work in the industry on other kids' shows, which is creepy and weird. Here is former Nickelodeon star Drake Bell talking about the acts of Brian Peck during his time as a child actor.
I woke up to him. I just opened my eyes. I woke up and he was I froze and was in complete shock and had no idea what to do or how to react.
Okay, so again, it's the unfortunate truth in Hollywood. A huge number of kid actors are abused. A huge number of them and treated horribly. There's a reason that kid actors come out really screwed up from Hollywood, because very often the people who are around them are willing to exploit them and willing to use them. And the question in all of this is, where are the parents? Why aren't the parents protecting their kids? Where are the systems that are supposed to protect people? And that's part and parcel of the creation of content that an entire society treated as perfectly normal and decent, like those clips of Ariana Grande. That is not a normal and decent society. Any society that greenlights that sort of stuff should not be particularly surprised at creating an over-sexualized childhood for the kids who are featured in this sort of stuff. Truly gross stuff. Someone put some warning about it for 20 years. That was not out of prudery. That's because we have functional brains. Are you tired of the lies and the twists of the mainstream media talking points? Yeah, me too. Join me in my newest series, Fact, where I dismantle and bring truth to this tiring mainstream agenda.